Hello everyone, my name is Zenitsu and I'm back with another Digimon deck profile video. So today I'm going to be taking a look at Special Booster 1.5 and taking a look at seeing what new powerful tools that we have to play with on a budget. And Red definitely has some really interesting tools that it could be playing around with. And unfortunately, Red is one of those colors where you do kind of just have to have the starter deck to act as a good base and foundation for what the rest of the deck is doing. But this red deck is definitely a really interesting red deck because it's basically mirroring what Gallantmon wants to do, just minus the Gallantmon. So going over the deck, starting with the Digitama, I'm going to be running one copy of Poromon. So Poromon is really just the 5th Digitama, and your 5th Digitama could be really anything you feel like you want it to be. But Poromon is pretty decent just because it has this nice inheritable ability of when attacking, we get to delete one of the opponent's Digimon with 1000 DP or less. So even though this ability isn't going to happen that often, the few instances that it does happen really can help control the board and take control of the board in your favor. But the main Digitama of the deck is going to be 4 copies of Koromon. So Koromon from the starter deck is definitely one of the better Digitama that Red has to be playing with, just because the inheritable ability is pretty generic and pretty decent. So what this card is doing is, as long as your Digimon has 4 or more Digivolution sources, then this card gains plus 1000 DP. So it's just one of the easier ways that we could DP boost our Digimon in a more generic way. Next, onto the rookies, I'm going to be running 2 copies of Agumon. So this Agumon is really nice because he has this great on-play ability where you get to check the top 5 cards of your deck, and then you get to add 1 Tamer card among them, and then the rest go to the bottom. So really, he's just in here to just try to help dig out our Tamers, which our Tamers aren't super important, but it's always nice to have them nonetheless, and so Agumon is just a pretty decent card at fishing them out. Next, I'm going to be running 4 copies of Guilmon. So Guilmon is in here because he's another DP boost card, and we're really looking to boost the DP of our Megas, so that way we can make them as powerful as we possibly can. And Guilmon's ability where as long as the opponent has 5 or more cards in their trash, then this Digimon gets plus 1000 DP, is definitely one of the easier ways to get that DP boost. And because we do play with a decent amount of removal in the deck, it's not like it's impossible to get them to have 5 cards in their trash, just from how the game naturally would progress. Next, I'm running 4 copies of Biomon. So this Biomon is from the starter deck, and it's a pretty fantastic Digimon just because this is a value-efficient rookie card, where you know the drill. Low play cost, low evo cost makes it a really good Digimon to have overall. And then the last rookie of the deck is going to be 4 copies of Agumon. So this version of Agumon is from the starter deck, and this version of Agumon is basically doing the exact same thing as what the Guilmon is doing, except a little bit better because you don't really need any conditions to get this Digimon to have that plus 1000 DP boost. So again, just the whole point on running this card is for that DP boost, because we do want our Megas to be as powerful as they possibly can. Next, on to the champions, I'm going to be running 2 copies of Greymon. So this Greymon is coming from BT-01, and this Greymon is pretty good just because, similar to Agumon and Guilmon, this Digimon is really only in here just to try to continuously DP boost our Digimon, so that they can be as powerful as they possibly can. Next, I'm going to be running 4 copies of DarkTyrannomon. So DarkTyrannomon is really only in here just because he has an evo cost of 1, and he has some relatively high DP compared to a lot of other level 4s in the game. So that makes him a really efficient card just to run and get into our higher stages with, or if we need him to aggress, then we could use him to aggress with. Next, I'm going to be running 4 copies of Koromon. So this Koromon is basically just the blocker of the deck, and that's really the only reason why we're playing him. And then the last champion of the deck is going to be 2 copies of Greymon. So this Greymon is from the starter deck, and this Greymon is really nice because he has the powerful inheritable ability of giving our Mega Security attack +1, so that way they can deal some extra security damage when they're aggressing onto. And that's really good just because it could help put a lot of extra pressure onto the opponent's security and close out games faster. Next, I'm going to be running 2 copies of Skullgreymon. So Skullgreymon is in here because he has this really powerful on-play ability where you get to delete one of the opponent's Digimon with blocker. So we do run a whole bunch of different control tools in the deck, and Skullgreymon is definitely a really powerful control tool to utilize just because he could help us clear out those pesky blockers. Next, I'm going to be running 3 copies of Lavogaritamon. So Lavogaritamon is a really powerful Digimon because it's basically fulfilling the same type of role as DarkTyrannomon, where for its level it has a really low evo cost and really high DP, and that's the main uses on what we're trying to utilize the card for, is a solid stepping stone to just get into our higher levels that much more efficiently, or if we need to aggress with it, then its slightly higher DP definitely helps. Next, I'm going to be running 2 copies of WarGrowlmon. So WarGrowlmon is definitely a really underutilized card, and I think for this type of deck, it is definitely a pretty interesting card because it has 2 big abilities. So its first ability is a when Digivolving ability, where if we have a red Tamer in play, then we get to delete one of the opponent's Digimon that has 3000 DP or less. So this is just another control type card where we're going to Digivolve up into it and then delete one of the opponent's rookies if possible. And then the other ability that it has is an inheritable ability, where it's just acting as a Guilmon in the inheritable, where it's just going to give the Digimon he Digivolves into plus 1000 DP as long as they have 5 or more cards in their trash. So again, between the removal type ability and the DP boost, this card is definitely a really interesting card to be playing around with. And then the last ultimate of the deck is going to be 2 copies of Silphymon. So Silphymon is another really solid and slightly underutilized card, considering how good this card could be in combination with some other cards. So it has a really powerful when Digivolving ability, where we get to change the original DP of one of the opponent's Digimon that's level 4 or less to 1000 for the turn, and then it also has this nice ability where this Digimon is also treated as yellow. So if we wanted to, we could think about utilizing a couple of yellow cards just because this is a great transition card. But for this style of deck, I just feel like it's pretty okay just using it as a red card, just to reduce the opponent's Digimon's DP to 1000. So that way, if you pair it up with, let's just say, Poromon, then you could swing with Poromon after Digivolving into Silphymon, and then clear out basically any level 4 in the game that you want. This is also pretty good in combination with a couple of other cards, depending on when and how you utilize the card. Next, on to the Megas, I'm going to be running 3 copies of Volcanicdramon. So Volcanicdramon is a very powerful Digimon to be playing around with just because of how flexible this card can be. So the first big thing about the card is it has a very powerful on-play ability where you get to delete all of your opponent's Digimon with 4000 DP or less. So this is just acting as a board nuke for all of the opponent's small Digimon, and especially if they're playing a go wide strategy, it could definitely be very, very devastating for the opponent. And then on top of which, it has a very nice ability of security attack +1, so that way it could pressure the opponent's security that much easier. And if we're choosing to Digivolve up into this, that's kind of like why we want all of the DP boosts, because it is slightly on the lower side in terms of DP, is definitely a very, very powerful way to utilize the card. Next, I'm going to be running 4 copies of Valkyrimon. So Valkyrimon is going to be the main mega of the deck, just because this is a very powerful Digimon to help control the field with. So it has a very nice when Digivolving ability where you get to delete one of the opponent's Digimon with 4000 DP or less. So it's kind of fitting that very similar role where it's just trying to punish the opponent for just trying to build a go wide strategy. And then on top of which, it also has a when attacking ability where you get to delete one of the opponent's Digimon with 4000 DP or less. So the ability is basically recursive, and you'll always try to consistently remove the opponent's Digimon down. And if you use it in combination with Silphymon, then it's just, again, very, very powerful of a combination. And it is on the lower side when it comes to DP, which is, again, why we're running so many DP boosts, just to make it as good as a lot of other megas, if not better. And then the last mega of the deck is going to be 1 copy of WarGrowlmon. So this WarGrowlmon is from the starter deck, and it is basically just our alternate win condition, where if all else fails, we'll try to just Digivolve up into WarGrowlmon, and then utilize his ability for every 2 Digivolution sources he has, he'll gain an extra security check. So this is just really, really powerful because a fully stacked WarGrowlmon could hit for 3, if not more security. And again, it's just there to help close out games faster and put a lot of extra pressure onto the opponent. Next, I'm going to be running 2 copies of Shield of the Just. So Shield of the Just is another pretty underrated option card, considering this is just a mini Gaia Force, where we're trying to utilize this card to remove basically the equivalent of their level 4 or 5 Digimon, because its ability allows us to delete any of the opponent's Digimon with 5,000 DP or less, and then if we have a red tamer in play, then we get to delete one that's 8,000 or less instead. So we are going to be playing some tamers in the deck, so that just helps it increase the chance that it could kill something even larger, but the fact that we just have another really solid removal option is definitely really good. And then if you already bought one copy of the starter deck, then you're already going to have 2 copies of Gaia Force. So Gaia Force is just a really solid option card, if not one of the best option cards, just because its main ability allows it to delete any of the opponent's Digimon, and then its security ability to activate its main effect just makes it even that much more powerful. And then the last card of the deck is going to be 3 copies of the starter deck Tai Kamiya. So if you already have the starter deck, then you already have this card. And this card is really good just because it's, again, DP boosting all of our Digimon, so that way they can hit even harder than they normally would and have a higher chance of survival. And then there's just a whole bunch of other cards that you could think about running or utilizing in the deck to make it even stronger than what it is now. So one of the cards that you could think about running is Digimon. So Digimon is just probably the best Digitama that Red has access to at this time. And if you could get your hands on a couple of copies of Digimon, then I definitely would, because this card's inheritable ability is really powerful for the deck, because while the opponent has 5 or more cards in their trash, then this Digimon gets plus 1,000 DP. So this just works a little bit better than Koromon, because you don't need to Digivolve it all the way up into a Mega to get any of the benefits, and you just need the opponent to have cards in their trash, so it could work on more than just the Mega level stage. You could also think about utilizing Biomon. So this Biomon's a pretty interesting card because this is a rather aggressive card because of its on-delete ability, where if it's our turn, then we get to gain 1 memory. So gaining that 1 extra memory could mean a lot, but it is a little awkward, the fact that it needs to be on our turn when it's deleted. So that just incentivizes you to want to attack into your opponent's security with this card, and still just gaining the memory is very, very powerful. Next, you could consider running Greymon from BT-03. So this version of Greymon is really powerful because he has a nice security ability where at the end of the battle, you get to play this card without paying its memory when it's checked from your security. So Surprise Digimons could definitely turn the tides of the game, because it definitely could help with your aggro game, where if you're trying to aggress onto the opponent's security, having this extra body that came out of nowhere for free definitely will allow you to help aggro onto the opponent if you're trying to close out the game, or if you just need this to Digivolve, then a free level 4 is very nice to have, so that way you could Digivolve up even easier. Next, you could think about using Agumon. So Agumon is a pretty decent Digimon just because it has a lot of synergy with Silphymon, and it's just a pretty decent inheritable effect to have overall, where it has this nice when attacking inheritable, where you get to delete one of your opponent's Digimon with 2,000 DP or less. So obviously, with Silphymon, you just Digivolve up into Silphymon, and then you could use Agumon under it to just swing and delete the Digimon that you just reduced it to 1,000. So that's like the intended synergy, but the fact that you could just continuously remove the opponent's Digimon as long as they're weak enough is still very, very powerful and very, very viable. Next, you could think about utilizing Groundramon, just because this is another tempo-efficient card, where it's just low to play, low to evolve, which makes it a really good stepping stool to get into your higher stages that much faster. Next, you could think about utilizing Metal Greymon, just because this is a very powerful Digimon for its inheritable ability, where its inheritable ability allows you to give this Digimon plus 3,000 DP, which is more than any of the other inheritables that we have. So this could allow us to hit really high numbers really quickly. And then on top of which, if we really need to utilize it for its security attack plus 2, we could do that, but it does have the drawback of losing 5 memory. So if you are planning on attacking with this card, you're most likely going to try to close the game out that turn. Next, you could also think about using Gallantmon, because Gallantmon is another control-based Digimon, and the deck is already kind of looking to be this control-based deck, where he has this very powerful when Digivolving ability, where if we have a red tamer in play, we get to delete one of the opponent's Digimon with 6,000 DP or less, so he has just another good removal effect attached to him. And then he has a really powerful when attacking ability, where we get to trash the top card of the opponent's security stack for every 10 cards in their trash. So if we're filling up their trash by removing their cards from the field, them being at 10 could be very easily achieved, and that just makes Gallantmon even more powerful when he's swinging, because this is removing it from the security stack. It's not doing a security check, so they will not gain any benefit from the card through his ability. If you already have the starter deck, then you already have all of the starter deck cards, so Phoenixmon is definitely another really powerful mega you can consider playing, just because it is very similar to a lot of the other value vanillas, where for its level it has a low play cost, it has a low evo cost, with some high DP, just making it an overall generically decent card. And then you could also think about running Omnimon. So Omnimon is just one of the best control cards that we have access to at this time. You could also run Omnimon Alter S. They're kind of just go hand in hand with each other, and they're trying to do the same thing on just control the field and really create a very powerful dominating board presence that's going to overwhelm the opponent if they don't handle the card, and there's a very high chance that they might not be able to handle the card, so he could just steamroll the game. And because we are trying to play this control type game and try to control their field, we're really trying to limit what options they have that they could utilize to really tackle what any of the Omnimon cards can be doing. And then you could also think about running the Kamiya from BT-01 just as a good memory fixing tamer, and because we are going to be DB boosting our megas to as high as they can hit, this will also allow them to hit even harder. As long as they have 4 or more evolution sources, then they'll gain an extra security tech to just apply more pressure and help close out the game even faster. So for the most part, this is just the deck. It's a pretty powerful and pretty interesting control-based deck on a budget, and even though it does require the starter deck cards to really function, it still has some very powerful upgrade paths, and it's still a very powerful control-based deck that you could think about playing and customizing. So that's all I really have for this video. As always, I'll have the deck list down in the description below. And down in the description below is also my TCG Player affiliate link. So when you use that link to make your checkout and purchases on TCG Player, some of that money will go to helping support me and the channel. So as always, tell me your thoughts down in the comments below. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more content. And I'll see you in the next video.